So today what we're going to talk about is one of the most important topics in statistics, and that's to be able to calculate the mean and standard deviation. And you're going to use this for almost everything you'll do for the remainder of the course, because the mean and the standard deviation are how we kind of create distributions and use them to solve problems. So the first one is to calculate the mean. So the mean is kind of also referred to as the average of a data set. So with all of these problems, I'm going to need a data set to work with. So let's go ahead and take a data set. We'll call it 3, 5, 7, 6, and 2. Just a small amount of numbers to keep calculations easy. Now the formula for the mean looks a little bit funny when you actually look at it, but the process is pretty easy to work with. The formula when you're in the textbook is going to look like the mean, which by the way we use this symbol to describe the mean, is equal to the summation of all the data points. This is xi divided by n, the number of things inside of the data set itself. So the formula looks a little weird, but the actual mechanics of this calculation are quite easy. Basically what it boils down to is it's just 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 6 plus 2, and then all of that divided by how many numbers we have, which is 5. We have 5 numbers. So the first step is just go ahead and take the sum of the numbers across the top, which I'll just run through a calculator real quick just for time's sake. And when we sum those numbers across the top, we get 23. And then we take that divided by 5. Now, obviously, that's not going to be a perfect number, but you're going to get 4.6. So that means the average, or the mean of this particular group of numbers, is 4.6. Now we have to talk about the standard deviation. And the standard deviation has the mean inside of the formula. So the typical process when you're creating these things is you want to be able to find the mean first. Now the formula for the standard deviation looks a little bit crazy, and it takes a little bit of time to actually run through it. So I'm going to break it down into steps and kind of show you a good technique if you're ever asked to solve these things by hand. The majority of the time we'll use calculators to actually find standard deviations, especially for large data sets, but for a small 5-number data set like this, we can go ahead and show how we can appreciate what we're going to be doing for larger data sets. So the symbol that is sometimes used is referred to as sigma, and the formula for this is the summation of all the values, all the xi's, all the values in the data set minus the mean we just calculated. Then we square that result, we sum them together, divide by n minus 1. Again, n being the number of things, and then we square root the entire thing. So as you can see, formula looks a little bit weird. So what we do is we break it down. The real complicated part is this summation in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break that summation down into the steps, and then we're going to go ahead and see it. So down below it here is where I'm going to work. So we have the first part, this interior. So what that means is I'm going to want to create kind of this table that I'm going to work with here. So we have 3 minus the mean, which we just calculated to be 4.6. Then we're going to have 5 minus the mean, which again, that's 4.6. 7 minus 4.6. 6 minus 4.6. And then finally 2 minus 4.6. Okay. Once we get that, we're going to go ahead and let's get all these subtractions going across. So 3 minus 4.6 is going to be negative 1.6. So now we have this subtraction, the subtraction of every single data point minus the mean that we calculated. Now you can see that we're going to square these things. So over here, I'm going to get the square of each of these. So now we have all their squares. Now we're going to simply add up this last row together to get that summation on the top. So what that happens is we have 2.56 plus 1.6 plus 5.76 plus 1.96 plus 6.76, and then we get 17. So the summation of all of these things, so we're adding them all together. So the summation of all these things is going to produce 17.2. So bringing that back to our original formula, we've just solved for what's right here in this numerator. So what happens is this formula becomes 17.2 divided by n minus 1. We have 5 data points up here. So n minus 1 becomes 4, and then all of that in the square root. So we have 17.2 divided by 4, which makes that 4.3. So we have the square root of 4.3, and then of course the square root of 4.3 is the final step, which gives us it's going to be a big long number that I'm going to round off. That's 2.074. So 2.074 is our standard deviation. So as you can see with the standard deviation, if you had a very large data set, this process could be very time consuming. But it's good to have an appreciation for what the mechanics actually are, because you could be asked to calculate them for small data sets. But for the larger ones, we'll typically stick to the calculator to get these calculations quickly. And I'll show you how to do that in later videos.